Great answer. So next up, let's move to the northernmost parts of Europe with Christer Borg from Sweden, who's the president of the River Savers Association that kind of combines 53 member organizations in Sweden. And he will tell us what it took to keep some of the great northern free-flowing rivers flowing. Welcome, Christer, we're all ears.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me now. Is it okay?
Perfect, yeah.
Do you hear me? Yeah, okay, very good. Thank you very much for letting me participate in this very, very important webinar. And I will tell you a little about our national rivers in Sweden. We have 4 of them that is stated in the Environmental Act, actually. But I will start with a little background. River Savers Association, which I am actually Secretary General nowadays, not President anymore. We have switched. So it's an umbrella organization for groups against hydropower exploitation. When we were formed in 1974. In Sweden, we have 12,000 plus dams. And you see the map there. It's not actually the real dams, but it's the kind of distribution of dams in Sweden, you see. Most often they are abandoned or without operations nowadays. Old mill dams and things like that. Around 3,800 of those dams are connected to hydropower plants. We have 2,100 hydropower plants, from the very, very smallest ones with an installed effect of less than 125 kilowatt, and up to about 208 of the big-scale hydropower plants. And as I said, we have 4 national rivers, and they are protected against hydropower exploitation. And all of them are up in the north of Sweden, the 1/3 land most north in Sweden. And why? So this is what I'm going to talk about now. The big-scale hydropower establishment, it started around 1909 in Sweden, and that was because Sweden tried to switch from an rural farmer nation towards an industrialization, and this went on. We had a new legislation in 1918, and then our parliament decided that every stream should be exploited with hydropower because we needed electricity. And this was not environmentally remarked until the 1960s, actually. It was a small mumbles in the 1950s, but until the 1960s, you can say it was without any bigger protests. And it all set off with the plans for Vindelälven, the Windel River, and that's about 700 kilometers north of Stockholm. And that was the kind of starting point for the more organized resistance against hydropower exploitation. The plans for the river Vindel was actually started in the beginning of the 1960s. But in the spring of 1970, our prime minister said, no, you are not allowed to exploit that river. It should be saved to the future as a natural river. And at that moment, local groups were founded everywhere else in Sweden to fight against other exploitation plans. So to have a kind of umbrella organization for all those groups, in 1974, our organization, River Savers Association, or in Swedish, now we have a small lecture how to pronounce this, Älvräddarnas Samorganisation, as it is pronounced in Swedish. We started in 1974 as an answer to this. And from that year and until the end of the 1980s, there was a kind of battle for our remaining rivers, free-flowing or not. And at the end of the 1980s, you can say that most of the exploitation was finished in Sweden. And our organization was participating in several of the governmental commissions over the same period of time, so to speak, as a part of these commissions. Because we had the parliament in Sweden, they had a national exploitation plan, actually, where they said that hydropower should to the Swedish electrical grid contribute with 66 terawatt hours of electrical energy. So the trick was now to point out which rivers should be exploited and which rivers would be saved for the future. And one of my former colleagues in this organization, he had a very, very rough time to be in that group to point out which rivers to be exploited and which to save. And of course, as a river saver, it's not a funny thing to do, of course, but he was kind of forced because the government and the parliament had decided that way. Anyway, due to this, there was a formal protection from hydropower exploitation in Sweden. And it started in the 1980s. For those rivers that shouldn't be exploited, they set these formal protections. Sorry. And all this is nowadays formalized in our present Environmental Act from the 1998. But already in 1992, the name National Rivers was stated in our parliament. So that's a name that most people in Sweden knows about. And there are, there are 4 rivers from the north to south. It's Torne River, and that's is on the border of Finland. We have Kalix River, we have Piteå River, and we have Vindel River. And every one of those are, as I said, up in the north of Sweden. Very, very nice rivers, especially Torne Rivers is really scenic too. So if you haven't been there, I urge you to go there and just stay there and watch it, or fish, or do some canoeing or something. Also, several other rivers and stretches are also protected under the same paragraph in the Environmental Act. So we have a lot of rivers and small stretches in the south of Sweden that has the same protections. And now my conclusions before I stop. The plus or the pros. A prohibition for building HP plants or divert water for hydropower to other rivers. That's, of course, very good. And it's also good, it's not just biodiversity, also the values of scenic views and other parameters, fishing science, research, that are parameters why they said they wanted to save those rivers. The cons, of course, the minus is we have exceptions. Those hydropower plants that was already existing in this river before the protection, they are allowed to be there. And there are exceptions for them to refurbish when they has to do that. So that's a thing that we struggle for in the Environmental Act, that when they have reached their lifespan, it should be removed instead of refurbished, of course, in a protected river. And also, actually, a new hydropower plant is possible if proven environmentally safe. And those application processes, they are open to legal frame of the full Environmental Act. That is okay. But this leads very often to legal procedures of very long duration. So we have 2 or 3 cases that has been in the court for 2 or 3 decades now. And we still are fighting them. So we asked 1 week ago, we plead to the High Court to stop one of those small hydropower plants. And also, there is no protection in this river against other exploitation projects as mining or lodging, etc. And mining is a question now in Sweden because our politicians will try to make Sweden the little China in Europe. So we have a lot of those metals that are used for solar cells and wind turbines and like that. So, and there is no protection against that. So there is not a full protection. Okay, thank you very much for letting me tell you these things. And if you have any questions.
Thank you, Christer. Yeah, I think we have to move on to keep on time, but thanks so much for your time and good luck with the dark, cold Swedish winter up there.
Thank you.
Thanks, really great.